Hello guys, you're welcome yet again to another video in this series. And in this video, what we are going to be doing is we're going to be fetching our contact, basically populating this object or this table that we have here. So without much talking, let's get straight into it. And here we are. Before I write any code, I want to say something right here. Some of you may be wondering why all this extra stuff written and we have not even spoken about them yet. Okay, because the reason for this is simply because I had already done this video before, and while I was editing all the videos I had done, somehow I accidentally deleted this, and I didn't know I actually had permanently deleted it from my bin. Not until when I did this, the video I had done before, no, sorry, not this particular video, but the video I had done before to replace this, that was supposed to be in place of this video, that I realized that I had already deleted the video, and I couldn't replace the video because I had already overridden the path and tried recovering it, but the video was not there any longer because I had already overridden the particular place where that video was stored. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be explaining a couple of things and writing code in some parts. So I'm going to be explaining the services, the actions, and reducers, and I'm going to be writing some code in the component itself. So now let's get straight into it. First of all, for what we are going to be doing in this video, we're going to be loading the contact from our API. So here we are with our function here called load contact. So basically all this function does is just initially loads the contact for us. So what it does is it gets the token that exists on the browser, local storage get item, gets the user, and pager is basically the number of items you want to show on a page. Then contact data URL is the URL where we are passing this, the endpoint from our API. It takes the token and it takes the number of items per page, and then we say http.getData returns a promise, then we return this data.catch, and it returns the error. So in the actions, what do we actually do in the actions? Pretty simple. For load contact user actions, what we do is we import load contacts here. So basically we import load contacts here, and next up we export a function called load contact user that returns dispatch, and it calls our load contact service that returns a promise, and it dispatches a type of load contacts, passing the response as its parameter. If there's an error, dispatches the type of fetch contact error, passing error as its parameter. And now we can move on to contact reducer. And in our contact reducer, the two things we need to take note of is the load contact and the fetch contact error. Now the load contact simply destructures our state, and it passes the response we are getting into our load contact state here. So the structuring is simply saying we are just trying to detach and get a particular object from the whole object. So here we have load contact, and we are destructuring load contacts from our state here, and we are mapping our action.response, which is the response we are getting here, to our load contact action type. And if there's any error, we call fetch contacts, we destructure load contacts and map load contacts to have action.error. And now that we have successfully set up our reducers, our services, and our actions, we can then head into view contact. So I'm going to go to view contact, and right here we are in view contact. And in view contacts, the first thing we will do is we're going to import our action, and this is going to come from our store, our actions, contact actions, and we are going to import load contact user. Okay, so now that we have imported load contact user, before we are ever going to be able to use load contact user within here, we would have to attach load contact user to be a property of view contact. And for us to be able to do that, we would have to import a couple of things. And the first thing we are going to import is the connect higher order component. So I'm going to say import connect, and this is coming from react-redux. And once we have successfully imported the connect higher order component, we are then going to wrap this around the connect other component so that the props that is available to our global state can also be available to this component. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to export default connect, and the connect higher order component takes a couple of parameters, most of which are the map state to props and the map dispatch to props. For now, we have no map state to props and no map dispatch to props, so we're going to call null and null, and we are going to go straight into creating them. So first I'm going to say const map map state to props, and our map state to props here is going to return this, and we're going to create our map dispatch to props. But to save me some time, I'm going to come straight up into add contact user, and I'm going to copy our maps, these two, and I even forgot to pass the state. So this copying sometimes has greater advantage. So now here we are, we have map dispatch to props and map state to props. So for map state to props here, we are going to be passing a couple of things. So I'm going to go into our contact reducer, and in our contact reducer we have load contacts. So I'm going to go back to view contacts, and I'm going to pass load contacts, right? Yes, load contact, and this is going to take the load contacts, which is basically, let me close saved, which is basically coming from our, let's go down to our contact reducer, and this is coming from here, load contact, which is part of our global state. So I'm going to control Z that, sorry, control shift Z, yes. And now for our map dispatch to props, we want to map load contact user to become a property of this component. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this to load contact user, and we're going to be dispatching load contact user. And we don't need any parameter just for now. Subsequently, as we go, we're going to be passing a couple of parameters to load contact user. So now that we have succeeded in being able to call our map dispatch to props and our map state to props, we can then come over here and get rid of this null. I'm going to say map state to props, I think. Let me go to add contacts and see. So map state to props and map dispatch to props. Yep. I often mistake the both of them as to which should come first or not. So map state to props and map dispatch to props in our view contacts. And now I can save that. And we are also sure we are passing, let's go to contact reducer. Yes, we are passing load contact. So back in here, since we have been able to pass this as a property of this component using our connect other component, what we can further do is we are going to use a lifecycle method here within class-based components called component did mount. And this is being called every single time the component mounts, or basically once the component mounts. What I mean by once the component mounts is once the component has started. All right, so once we've had the components, then it now calls itself. So we are going to call component did mount, and component did mount is going to simply call the load contact user, which has already been passed down as a property of this component. So I'm going to say this.props.load contact user, and now I'm going to save this. So right now we have successfully been able to pass load contact user as a property of this component. And if I go to my browser, you can see we have no error just yet. Now let's head back here, and what I am going to do is, in order for us to be able to see this within our component, I would need to destructure load contact since it has become a property of this particular component. I made the load contact reducer, the load contact reducer here. So what I like to do first of all is I'm going to console.log this.props, and I'm going to call an async here and call an await here. And now if I save this and I head back to our browser, we can inspect that, and we're going to check down on our console. And in our console here, you can see we are receiving the content or the data basically. So the challenge now is going to, how are we going to render this data to our UI? So now let's head back straight into our text editor. And what I am going to do first of all is I'll need to destructure load contact user. So now let's get into our render lifecycle method. I am going to destructure this, but first of all, let me check out something. So let's go back to look at the console, and I'd like to know exactly. So we have data, because what we're going to be destructuring load contacts. So let me see if I console.log this.props, and I head back to my browser, and these are all coming from, this is what we need from view contact. So here we are, and we have location, we have match, we have load contact user. Okay, so I am going to be destructuring load contact from our props. So what I'm going to do now right here is I'm going to say load contact is going to be destructured from this.props. And we are having an error here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the const here just to make this a constant, and I'm going to save this. And we have a little challenge. How do we render this inside of this? The first thing we are going to do is we are going to change the name of our table cells so that our table cells look just similar to the data we are receiving here, which is the first name, the last name, the email, the phone number, and an image. So what we are going to do now is we are going to change this to first name, and this is going to be last name, this is going to be email, this is going to be phone number. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake here. So we are going to phone number, and the last is going to be called profile image. Now if I save that, we have an error here. That is because we are missing this. So save that, and now, oh sorry guys, get back in here, and we have a first name, last name, email, phone number, profile underscore images. So for us to be able to display this contact on our UI, we would need to loop through load contacts. And to loop through load contacts, thanks be to God, we already have rows.map here. So we are not going to do anything much, but first off, we are going to check for the data property of what we are trying to map, because load contact is sending us a whole bunch of data. So we need to check the presence of this data before we start to do any mapping. So what we are going to do now is we are going to first of all check for the presence of load contact. So I'm going to say if load contact, all right, so if load contact is present within this component, then I am going to then say and not just present, all right, I'm going to say load contact dot data dot data, and the data dot data, because if I head back here to check out the data we have, you can see here we have data before we can access the data here. So the data dot data dot map, and the map we have the row, so we can have row dot first name, we can have row dot last name, and row dot phone number, row dot email, sorry, before phone number. So let's just have row dot email here, and next up row dot phone number here, and here we're going to have row.file image, if I'm correct. Save that and get over to our browser, and we have an error saying file image. So we are going to check out that, and it's image underscore file. So row.image underscore file. Save that. We are still having an error here, and that is because here we are saying if load contact is true within our table row. So I'm going to come here, and if load contact is true, then do this, else just return null. And we have a problem here, and now let me move over that. It said expected a semicolon here, and to fix this we are going to get this out of here, and let's see. So yep, we are going to pass this here, and now our error goes. Now if I save this and we head over to the browser, you are going to see that it has loaded our data, and for some reason our first name is not rendering, and first name, and let's go into the console, and in our console let's just check the object that is being returned to us, and we have first name, so we must have made a typo somewhere. So sorry, our key is supposed to be row.id. Sorry guys, row.id is our key, and here we'll have row.first name, and the second is supposed to be row.last name, the third is supposed to be row.email, here is supposed to be row.phone number, and phone number, and now the last is going to be file underscore image underscore file. Let me just check that up, and we have, what do we have? No, image underscore file. So I'm going to call role.image underscore file. Save that, head over to our browser, and everything displays fine except why do we have this breaking again? Table cell, table row.file name. I think there's a problem. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. First name. Our line is seeming to stop here, and that is because our phone number is not displaying. So we missed out on our typo here by typing phone number instead of phone number. Actually phone number instead of phone number. So here we are, we have everything displaying properly. We have phone number, image file, email, last name, first name. But here we are, there seems to be a greater problem. We still are not having this properly displayed. So let's check that again. So we have first name, last name, first name, last name, email, phone number, image file, and we still basically have the same problem. And the problem is because we imported, or basically we have something here that we don't need, one of the table cells. So I'm going to get rid of this table cell, and now if I save that, that line should disappear. Yep. So we have first name, last name, email, phone number, profile underscore image. Now let's head back into our application, and the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to be displaying our images. Because if you look here, we only have the name of the image, but we really don't have the image himself. So for us to be able to display the image, we are going to head back to our browser, and I'm going to inspect this element and check out our console once again and check out the object. And you can see we have something here called file underscore directory. This is basically leading us to the absolute path coming from our API. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to call an image tag right in here, and this image tag is going to carry a source, and I like the width to be 50 and the height to also be 50 so that this image looks a bit normal within what we are building. So what you also notice is this is not within our data.data set. All right, this is just the load contact. So this is just within the load contact object. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say our source is going to be load contact dot file underscore directory, And we are going to concatenate a couple of things here so that we can get the / which is missing here. And we are then going to concatenate row.image_file here. So we're going to pass row.image_file, and I'm also going to get rid of this and just adjust this a bit. Now if I save this and I head over to my browser, you can see that our images are now perfectly displayed. So we have our name, our last name, our email, our phone number, as well as our images. And what I am going to do now is, within our pagination component, I'm going to say right here, because this is where our pagination component ends, I'm going to say if load contact is present. If it's not present, then just return null. Alright, so just basically return null. But if load contact, if load contact is present, then what we want to do is we're going to be changing this total value to the total value of the data coming down from our API. That we can be able to know the exact amount we should display per page. I'm talking about the pagination down here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to inspect this element and head down to our console, and in our object we have data, but within data we have total here. So you can see we're going to go the data.total. So what I'm going to do now here for our total is I'm going to call load contacts.data.total, and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to head back to our browser, and here we have this. So you can see that this is actually displaying based on the number of content for this user. So, but I'm going to leave our default page size at 5. So now I save that, I head back to our browser, and everything looks pretty much fine. So that's just about that for this video. In the next video, we are going to be paginating and searching.